Welcome to Beyond the Canopy, the podcast where we explore the most innovative approaches to ecosystem restoration and impact-driven investments. I'm your host, Alexander. Today is a special episode. I have not one, but two guests from the same organization, from Ecosia, which is a search engine that plants trees. On April the 22nd, which is Earth Day, Ecosia is celebrating a massive milestones, 250 million trees planted, which corresponds to thousands of hectares restored. But Ecosia does much more than planting and counting trees. It's a search engine that's currently building its own European infrastructure. It's a pioneer in circular funding for nature restoration. And it's a company whose founder gave up his right to ever profit from it. Our conversation today has two threads. It's the story of the search engine and its strategy and vision. And on the other hand, it's a story of what happens on the ground when those search queries turn into trees and restored landscapes. So to tell the first story, I'm joined by Christian Kroll, who's the founder and CEO of Ecosia. And to tell the second, I'm joined by Pieter van Midwoud, who's Ecosia's tree planting officer, which I think is maybe one of the best titles you can get. I know both of you personally, and I'm really excited for this conversation. So welcome to Beyond the Canopy, Christian and Pieter.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with you, Christian. You traveled the world after university and you saw both the beauty, but also the environmental destruction. How did that experience lead you to the idea that a search engine could plant trees? That's not really an obvious connection, right?
So maybe the other piece of information that is that needs to be added here is already during my university times, I studied business administration, and I was running a little website that compared different financial service providers. And every time somebody signed up for one of those providers, I earned a commission. So that was basically my university startup that generated some money. But I also realized, hey, I'm giving most of the money that I'm actually generating in revenues, I'm giving right back to Google, because I needed to pay Google for advertisements to get people to come to my website. So that was how I realized that Google has an extremely good business model. So how much profit Google is generating. And especially then, I didn't really travel, but I actually spent half a year living in Nepal, and then almost 1 year living in South America, especially Argentina. And during that time, I just saw as you said, the beauty of our planet, but also how much at risk it is. And I wondered, what if there was more money available? So how can I help? And what if there was more money available and we don't need just a few millions, we actually need billions to solve this problem? And I basically looked at Google and I thought, okay, what if there was a green Google? And that was a very naive thought. I thought, okay, then there is no green Google. Let's just make a green Google. And I just tried to start somehow. And the early days, the product wasn't that great, but then we got better and better over time and are now in a position where we have a really good search engine that uses all of its profits for the climate. And as you said, we're reaching 250 million trees. It took us a while. Initially, I thought, okay, I just build a green Google, then I get to 5% market share, and then I have 1 billion trees planted after a few years. It turned out to be a bit more complicated, but still, the milestone is amazing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Google is a little bit reluctant to give you more space, right? So
yeah, it's a market that is very, very profitable, and the incumbents of that market are defending their market share fiercely. It's not easy.
Yeah. So let's be strong on that. So Pieter, you studied forestry and nature conservation at Wageningen, worked at CarbonFix, one of the first carbon standards. Later went over to Gold Standard, or I think it has been acquired by Gold Standard, something like that. No? So you basically came from the carbon certification and standard world, and then you joined a search engine company. What made you make this decision?
one of the advantages of working first at CarbonFix, which we founded, then went over to Gold Standard, is that I knew many projects around the world already that were doing reforestation, and many of them really good. Working with smallholders, doing really great nature restoration. And of course, through those carbon institutions, they were looking for finance to make that work possible. But I also saw many that were actually not able to get to that sort of finance. And when I saw that Ecosia is looking for a tree planting officer, actually my partner founded the advertisement. I was first like, yeah, well, just another company that wants to do something green. And then I looked in it in more detail, and I saw the revenues that Ecosia is having and the division that they're having. And I was like, well, this is really a big opportunity to to mobilize finance for all those projects that are out there that really need additional finance to get running, but for example, cannot get access to carbon markets, are too small or too scattered for all of that. And to be honest, that's the majority of the work that needs to happen. So this is when I realized how powerful Ecosia potentially could be. We could really make a difference that no one else can make. So I applied, and I got the job, and that's also exactly 10 years ago now this year. And since then, I've been building up the whole reforestation and restoration portfolio that Ecosia has. And I mean, that's been an incredible journey. We will talk about it more, I'm sure. But I could, of course, bring some of my experience that I had from my previous jobs. But I've also learned so many new things. I mean, we work with more than 100 partners worldwide, and they all have local knowledge about what works and what doesn't. So we as Ecosia are also somehow a knowledge hub. We bring all this knowledge together, and it means it really helps us to make the new projects that we're doing that are coming in again better, because we have seen in that region already what works and what doesn't. So yeah, this is why I joined, and this is still what really motivates me, that Ecosia can do things that no one else is doing, and in particular not at the scale that I've seen. We have such a big focus on native trees. We plant close to 2,000 different tree species. About 10% of them are critically endangered or endangered. We work with many smallholders all over the world. We make nature restoration possible in places where probably no one else could see a business case, and we're doing it. And that gets me out of bed every day.
Great, Peter. So you mentioned you already worked 10 years with Christian. What kind of person is Christian? So if you would describe him.
I mean, Christian obviously is very mission driven. He really cares only about impact and the planet. He gave away the shares of the company to the Purpose Foundation, so he made Ecosia a purpose company, so it could never be sold and he would never make profit. And I think that's the ultimate evidence that he is really in it for what we want to achieve. We want to create a better world, and we see Ecosia as one of the companies that can really contribute to that, or pave the way, if you like. And I think that's very obvious. And this is also in the past 10 years, when we talk, that's the one thing we never doubt. I also don't think the other way around. We really both want this to happen. And one day he told me, I'd rather be the CEO that just stands in the corner of the company and at his desk with a white t-shirt. And then if some externals enter the room and he asks, who's that guy over there? He's like, oh, that's our CEO. So he doesn't have any, he doesn't want to be the one about whose the show is. The show is actually about planet Earth, and he wants to facilitate that. And being a CEO also means that you have to make many decisions to get this thing rolling, which is not always an easy job. But at the end of the day, he is really impact driven. He wants to innovate. He wants to see new things happening. We challenge each other, but it's also been really a very good relationship because this base is really there.
Yeah, thank you. Now the other question around, who is Peter, Christian, when you see him working in the field and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably hear it from Peter's answers. I think that, I mean, this long-time dedication to the restoration of our planet, I think that is like really part of Pieter's identity. And I sometimes feel like, okay, it's actually a dream come true that we basically found each other, because this is really what Ecosia needs. But also, I think to have this kind of stable finance available to do what Pieter wants to do is just an amazing coincidence, I would say. And not be driven by, okay, but this needs to be, I don't know, actually it's a marketing department spending some restoration budget and we only need nice pictures. But no, the way we want to do this is let's make sure we have good long-term impact and let's really be honest about it. And if something goes wrong, we also talk about it. So I think that approach is what naturally makes sense, and I think what naturally Pieter would do. But there are very few companies where you can actually do this, or few organizations where you can actually do it. And yeah, I think Pieter just really, really cares about our mission, and Pieter also really cares about I think the people who work in those projects or who are affected by those projects. So a few times I had the opportunity to visit a project with Pieter, and you see the connection to the people, I think. So it's not only tons of carbon or something like that, because there is a much bigger story behind many of the projects that we have. It's thousands and thousands of people who are really, where we're changing their lives and their futures. And I know that Pieter really deeply cares about each of those stories.
Yeah, Christian. So I know also Pieter a bit through a different conversation. I can only agree to that. So now as Ecosia has grown, just from the internet, I see it's many millions that have been collected. I guess maybe Ecosia is one of the biggest environmental organizations also in Germany, contributing to conservation, but also to other areas like renewable energies, etc. We come to that later. At a certain point, Christian, you made really the decision, not to cash out, not to make big margins. What were your thoughts on this day, making this decision to say, okay, Ecosia will become a kind of company that will never make profits for individuals, only for nature?
Yeah. So, actually, when I started Ecosia, it was already, so I already made that promise. I said, okay, we always give 100% of the profits for the planet. This is not about me getting rich, but actually to have a significant positive contribution to our planet. And I told that to the first employees or the first people who helped build Ecosia, and also to journalists. But I would also say, in hindsight, this was an easy promise to make when your company basically has zero value. So, in the first years, there was not much to give up. Basically, we were struggling to pay at least some salary to people. But then when Ecosia got bigger and bigger, and actually similar companies were valued hundreds of millions, then I realized, this is a really big promise. And I also, I still felt, okay, that's the right path. But the real reason why in 2018, I think I decided to give away basically almost all of my shares to the Purpose Foundation and make this kind of legally binding, was also because people in the company were asking for it. They said, okay, yeah, you say always 100% of profits will go to the planet, but there is no legally binding thing written down that guarantees that. And the employees like Pieter, who have been with us for 10 years, they are also dedicating a lot of their time and energy to Ecosia. So it's they're also very much invested. And I think they want a sort of a guarantee that this doesn't end with a huge disappointment in the end, because there are many companies that say, yeah, we're in this for the planet, and then I don't know, in the end they sell to Nestle or something like that.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen. There was a little bit of a situation where I felt like, okay, but you could also have many millions on your bank account. Are you really sure? But then I realized, okay, what would I do with many millions on my bank account? I would just try to invest this in a way that it helps our planet. So I can do that through
Doing that
Ecosia
directly.
yeah, in a much more powerful way. So it wasn't a big step. Actually, it was just a consequence of the initial promise. And also something that I think Ecosia would just not be the same if we wouldn't have this. If there was always the fear, okay, Christian could cash out at some point, or I don't know, in the end, this is a normal company that could just be taken over by Google or Microsoft, I think it would not have the same
Spirit, yeah.
spirit and DNA.
Yeah.
And I think we can only, because I hope we can also be kind of this role model for an alternative business that actually helps regenerate our planet and doesn't just destroy it. And yeah, the only way to do that in a credible way is to make sure that we're not part of this shareholder value maximization, exit-driven world. Yeah, that, and I mean, because I study business, like there are a lot of people in the business world who say, yeah, if in such a company there is no motivation, those companies will just fall apart. If there's no shareholder driving the interests further, and I mean, this was 2018, so 8 years ago. We have grown since then, and I'm still here. So I think this is a myth that so people can be very, very motivated even without having those like on the horizon, the perspective of having a big exit at some point.
Yeah, I also have to admit, in the beginning, I was following you, Ecosia, and thinking, how is this different to Krombacher, who plants some rainforest for every crate of beer? And I think when this announcement come through that this has become an NGO, I was full into Ecosia, because I know you also. I'm a forester, so I know tree planting is not an easy thing. Yeah, so there are droughts, there are calamities, there are political situations that makes it difficult, and for sure, not every tree survived the next 10 years. So that's also part of the natural process of planting a forest. But every tree has contributed to local people. Money has flown into pockets of people to planting trees and not harvesting trees. And therefore, I really admire what you're doing. I want to become now a little bit more technical. To maybe describe a little bit the business model and also the vision of Ecosia's search engine. So together with the French search engine, if I'm not mistaken, Quant, you built something called STAN, which is a European search index. And for the first time in 16 years, Ecosia is delivering its own independent search results. So why does Europe need its own search infrastructure?
Yeah. So I mean, we've always been thinking about that because, I mean, for many years, if you typed in a query at Ecosia, we would send this query either to Google or to Microsoft, which is okay. I mean, they're good partners, but also for us, this was always a risk. Okay, we're dependent basically on our competitors, and as long as they are behaving in a fair way, that's maybe not a problem. But it's always a strategic risk, and that risk just in the past few years just got higher and higher, not really because of Google or Microsoft, but especially because of the way the United States are behaving. Yeah. And I mean, a few years ago, I was still joking, saying that, hey, what if the US president at some point decides to cut us off from the internet, and then suddenly we don't have any search results anymore and need to go back to our good old phone books. So a few years ago, that was a joke. Now this is not really a joke anymore. Like, this could realistically happen. I don't hope it will happen, but it could realistically happen. And because we have no European infrastructure that could replace US search technology, we are in a position where we could easily be blackmailed. And I mean, you saw this with the conversations between von der Leyen and Trump, where she basically didn't have any leverage because she knew we are basically a digital colony of the United States. And we need to get out of this conversation to hold up the values, the European values, that the fundamental values of democracies and freedom. If the US decides to become more and more, or leave that path more and more, that path of that used to be common values in the Western world, and they're gradually giving up on them. So now we're in a position where we're already generating, I think, roughly half of our search results ourselves for the French market. This is the first market where we started, and we're also rolling this out now in in other markets where we build our own index and we're gradually kind of adding our own search results into the mix whenever we know that our search results are good, like the same quality or better than what Google or Microsoft are giving us. And in 1 or 2 years, I think we're in a position where we could probably live without Google or Microsoft. It might still be a different type of service, but we are not fully dependent anymore. And that means not only Ecosia is not fully dependent anymore, but Europe isn't dependent anymore on Google or Microsoft in this area of search. And this is a big investment for us, but I think this could be something that could turn out really as something really, really important for Europe overall, and maybe kind of the free world in a way, because this, like, getting less dependent on US big tech, I think, has become a question of geopolitical safety and freedom. And yeah, we're kind of in the middle of this. This was not what I was planning initially when I started the company, but it's kind of a natural consequence. If you see what's going on, we just have to do that.
Yeah. So a spontaneous question would be: is then Ecosia maybe slowly becoming a critical infrastructure? Are you facing any threats from hackers or things like that that might have other opinions, or which do not want to lead to let's say free thoughts?
I mean, so yeah, we're getting attacked all the time, but this already for many years. And I'm not sure if those are kind of political actors or just people who want to hack a search engine. But I think, I mean, Ecosia should be considered by our European leaders as one of the big hopes when it comes to digital independence. And for me, what is most or very disappointing there is that actually many, like even ministers or like in the public sector, many institutions are still using Google or Bing as their default search engine. This just doesn't make sense. We have a European alternative that is, I mean, also protecting our privacy, that is protecting our independence, that is paying taxes in Europe, and that is also giving 100% of profits for the climate. I mean, why wouldn't you make that the default? It just doesn't make sense. And we had so many conversations and people promising, yeah, digital sovereignty is super important, la la la. And they don't even manage to just make the switch, which only takes, I don't know, maybe a few hours. Yeah.
I just learned this morning for the call that Ecosia has not only a search engine but also a browser, and it would be super easy to set it up on public computers. Yeah, also within companies and businesses, right?
Yeah. So we are Europe's biggest search engine, Europe's biggest browser, and pretty soon we will also be Europe's biggest AI app. So, I mean, we are one of the few hopes in this area of becoming more independent of US big tech. And using Ecosia is not only good for the planet, but also good for, I think, Europe and our foundations, democratic foundations.
Maybe last question to the tech side. You have also integrated AI assisted into the search. Do you see their attention, because AI consumes enormous amounts of energy and water? What's your opinion, and what do you do about it?
Yeah. So I mean, we've been pretty slow to add this because exactly of those concerns. So we wanted to really understand, okay, what are the consequences? How does this technology evolve? And also, are there alternatives that are less energy intense? And I mean, the solutions that we have now are models that are much more lightweight, that consume a lot less energy. We know how much energy they consume, and we still produce a lot more energy than they actually need. So I think we really have a good alternative to the kind of standard AI models. And then also, I mean, again, just the fact that we're basically a non-profit company running this, I think also makes a big difference, because AI is a new thing. It's not like a search engine where you maybe type in some queries. You actually really share a lot of private information. And I would not want to share this with one of the big tech companies. I think there needs to be some institution that you can actually trust, and I think we can be that institution. So yeah, so it's not without topics that we still need to solve, but there needs to be one offering that is at least better than what is currently offered by the US big tech companies. And I think we're in a good position already. And at least, the question of energy and water, I think we have that under control because we're really generating a lot more electricity than we need to run it.
Yeah, great. Cool. Yeah. Pieter, let's turn to the trees. On April 22nd, Ecosia will celebrate 215 million trees planted. If I got it right, across more than 35 countries, on a huge amount of locations, I think almost 100,000 locations. What does a number like 250 million actually look like on the ground? So how can we imagine what's going on there?
Yeah, it is really an amazing number because, as I think we already said earlier, like behind every tree there is a story. So in fact, we're talking about 250 million tree stories here. And if not the tree, then at least hundreds of thousands of people who helped to plant all these trees. So there's a lot behind this number, but maybe the first thing I should clarify is that, when I joined, Christian and me, and others in the company, we were very clear. We don't actually care about how many trees we plant. We care about how many trees are growing. And this number of 250 million also represents what is growing and not how many we've planted. We've planted more, but in all our contracts, we always look at how many trees are growing 3 years after the intervention. And this we monitor, we ourselves or the partner, or we have independent auditors. For example, we work with the botanical gardens, and they verify this. And when I now look at these massive numbers we have, we are actually at around 80% survival rate in our whole portfolio. So the 250 million is not trees that we put in the ground. It's what we think from all our contracts is growing 3 years after the intervention. And that just shows, I think, one of the ways how we really try to pioneer and improve this sector, because there's a humongous restoration question for the world. Like every day, unfortunately, we're still losing forests to fires, to agriculture, to infrastructure, and we need to get a sector that knows how to restore these and that knows the best practices for each of the different locations. How to do this, and this can only be done if we are not afraid of looking at the results.
Yeah.
And this is what I've been mainly working on in the past years. Is at the one hand, how can we innovate the different techniques how we plant trees? And Alex, also through your platform, in most places in the world, planting trees is not an ecological question, but more a socio-economic question, because you're planting the trees on someone's land. And whether this is private land or communal land or governmental land, but it always means you have to deal with people. And we try to do it the other way around. We try that those people start to deal with us. So they have a plan, they have a vision, how they want to change their landscape. They have certain needs, and we can help them financially by making some of those dreams come true. But it's really important that this is a bottom-up movement that we can help to achieve the right things. When we look at how we do restoration, how we plant all these different trees, yeah, as you said, it's actually in more than 40 different countries with over 100 different actors we have planted, and each of them bring a bit of knowledge into our organization. That when a new organization applies, we always already have a bit of experience.
Yeah.
And maybe a last thing that I think is really important is we are rating our projects every year. We do a sort of a holistic test on 7 different dimensions to see where does the project needs to be strengthened. What, where do we see the weakness? What must be done better? So these 250 million trees are planted, but most of all, they're growing. They're monitored, both by satellites as with on-the-ground checks, and they're part of a much wider sort of ecosystem of Ecosia and its partners that knows how to do things.
Cool. Yeah, when you say every project also brings a little bit of tree planting restoration knowledge to Ecosia that you're going to share then with new projects. So what kind of project does Ecosia support? So I'm just thinking from the perspective of a project developer listening to this podcast. How does my project qualify to become to be supported by Ecosia, and how to connect with you?
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So first of all, I don't know exactly when we will publish the podcast, but on the 22nd of April, we are doing a 4 hours seminar online for everyone who's working in the restoration sector, in which we share our lessons learned from planting these 250 million trees. And it will be a combination of scientists who did very cool publications on this work, like Paul Smith and Karen Hall, but also many of our partners that we have said, okay, come with one of the biggest problems you had and how you solved it. So it should really give you a lot of new ideas when you work in this space. And it's going to be recorded. So if you can't participate, you can watch it later. We do this together with the Land Journal magazine. Okay, but in my mind, or let's say in the tree team's mind, so we have a tree team at Ecosia that is managing this whole portfolio. There's basically 3 sorts of trees, maybe 4. Let me start actually with the 4th one. And these are trees that are still there, standing trees in, we always think about the Amazon, but of course, in many places in the world, there's still trees growing. Very much worth protecting. And in many of our projects, we have different activities to actually reduce the pressure on those trees as well. Okay, so that's one category of trees. But then the 3 that I actually wanted to talk about are, there's trees that are part of a business case financially. This can be because of agroforestry systems. They integrate coffee in sort of nature mimicking forests or cocoa, or, if you look at the regenerative agriculture movement or permaculture, there's a lot of systems that combine annual crops with perennial crops. We love these, and we really love to work with companies that have these sort of projects or interventions as part of their business, and we want to support them. And this is what we call our circular funding program, because we would do an investment into these projects, and we would get a return from it, and we would use the return again to finance more projects, because no money ever leaves Ecosia's ecosystem. It's always being reinvested in our purpose. Then there's trees that actually that are part of such a system, but it's a bit more difficult to really make a business case. But this is, for example, when you plant in agroforestry systems with smallholder farmers. This can be in Borneo, where we do this already for many years very successfully. Many African countries are having programs like that, but also in South America. This is very much about improving the livelihoods of smallholder farmers by diversifying their systems, but also making them more resilient, which with all the climate change that we're having everywhere in the world is very, very important. And there is also in this project already intrinsically a very strong case for keeping care of these trees, because the farmers directly benefit from them. So that's the second category. It might be more difficult to really make that a sort of investable, bankable project because it's too scattered. But there is a very strong motivation for the actors involved to care of the trees. And then we have the third category. And that is, I would say, from a long-term perspective, the most challenging. But if you like challenges, it's also maybe one of the most interesting ones. And that is where we are doing pure nature restoration, and also the land on which we are planting is not held by one person, but it is either a bit unclear or it is communal land, etc. And there you really need the right custom experiences on the ground of the systems that work. There it is so important that you have local communities that thrive these projects. In the best case, they are the ones who actually come up with it. And then it really helps if you, for example, have a legal system locally that supports this sort of activities. Like in Ethiopia, there's a lot of regulation actually stimulating communities to take care of eroding hillsides, etc. But also you really want to make sure that it's not taking land away from people who, for example, grazing their animals there, but it would actually increase, for example, the grass production on these fields. And in particular, this last category is where I think we need a lot of knowledge in this world, because there's so many areas that need to be restored. But yeah, where the ownership structures, etc., is way more challenging. And at Ecosia, we very consciously keep like 50% of our portfolio that way, because these are the lessons we want to learn. And whether this is on Madagascar or whether this is in Brazil, there's many places where we need this knowledge to develop.
Yeah. I think you once said, I'm relating a little bit now to the trees that might not have like a bankable or business case. Sorry, we couldn't protect the world because there was no business case. And I think this is like, I think, a very important field where Ecosia also steps in, right? So especially to
Absolutely.
assist
Absolutely.
these cases.
No, it's that, I have young children, and in 50 years, as you said, I don't want to tell them we weren't able to save the world because we couldn't figure out a business case. I mean, it's absurd. You just saw the astronauts returning from, in my view, a bit unnecessary other circling around the moon, but they again describe the planet as this one little sort of rescue boat that is floating in an endless black area, and we are on that boat, and we should really take care of our boat. And therefore, we need to restore areas because of all the indirect benefits we have them, but also because nature just needs them.
Maybe also there, I think a very interesting role that Ecosia has played over the years is that we're not really part of the carbon market. And we have this, because the carbon market has gone up and down all the time. And we're one of the few companies who actually just provide money for those projects because we know they make sense, independently of how many credits you can sell or not. And I think that that type of funding would actually be needed at much bigger scale. But unfortunately, carbon markets, I've seen 2 or 3 like bubbles and busts of bubbles in 16 years that we're doing this. That isn't helping. You wouldn't need this kind of this big constant finance for those huge areas. And I hope that humanity at some point can decide, okay, let's put aside a few 10 or 100 billions a year and really restore basically all of the degraded land that we have on our planet. I really hope that this will happen at some point, but what it needs is people who already build up knowledge on how exactly we can do that. So I hope we will come to our senses in a few years, and then Ecosia can maybe provide its kind of knowledge base and say, look, this is what we did here. It went really well. Here we can invest billions if we want and really scale this.
Yeah. I think it's still a problem that there's more money fighting against nature at this stage than for it. And I think we have to create mechanisms that become so obvious that it makes more sense to put money into the right places. So I think there's still 7% of the global GDP that goes into fossil fuel subsidies, and I think we just need 1%, or which is I think 1 trillion, if I'm not mistaken, per year, to stop the severe degradation of our environment globally. So which is really a super mean equation that we spend 7 times the money in destroying the world just on the fossil fuel side, then and do not come up with 1% of the global GDP to make really a change. But maybe let's stay a little bit here on how to channel money into the system, because not every project generates revenue, and restoring severely degraded land or protecting biodiversity doesn't pay for itself directly. How do you finance the permanence for these projects? I don't know to whom I shall ask this question.
I can start. So, first of all, it's really important for every project to think about their exit, and the exit doesn't need to be a financial exit, but there needs to be a concept like, okay, if after 5, 10, or even 15 years or 20, we step out, what will happen? And to just be blunt, if you've just been paying communities for 10 years a nice salary to put trees in the ground, and then you leave, well, probably not many of these trees will still be there 10 years later, because the motivation was a very different one than on the trees. So we're seeing really great concepts to work really shoulder to shoulder with communities about what it is that you need, how will you benefit from these systems, and what does it mean? So what is our vision in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, and in 20 years from now? And this is more often actually on landscape level. I mean, they talk about erosion. Water is, of course, a very big issue that is always addressed. Biodiversity. So the design of the project should be, okay, this is where we work towards together. hopefully with as many neighbors as possible. And therefore, if we have established this system, and this can be food forests, like for example we're doing in Senegal, or this can also be on watershed level, as we have some partners doing that. Farmers graduate after 8 years after they have achieved certain milestones, and then they let go from the program. For others, it will be more challenging. It's about large communal areas. The design is good, but we really have to keep on monitoring how things are going. And therefore, I think Ecosia is in a unique position as a purpose company, because our contracts maybe say like, we count your tree when it's 3 years old, but it doesn't mean that we stop monitoring at that moment. Every tree that we've planted since 2015, the first one is in Brazil actually. My colleague Matthias, who lives in Brazil, is going to visit it this weekend because of our 250 million celebration.
The first tree, so the first tree you put into the ground.
The first tree planted by Ecosia, yeah. And because we map everything, we know where this tree is. So he's going there. He lives like 2 hours from there, and he's going to take some photos and talk with the tree and see how he's doing. Anyways, the point that I wanted to get to is that we don't stop measuring after 3 years. We continue. With this can be site visits, but it can also be with satellites. We do that as well. And if we see that in certain areas, the restoration could really benefit from extra maintenance or another intervention, we can discuss that with the partner. Now, there will be trees that don't make it because you find out in hindsight it wasn't a good idea, or there has to be some severe storm or fire that you couldn't predict 10 years ago when you planned it. It's just a lost case. This happens. And then there's trees that are just thriving, and basically you put them in the ground and you don't have to do anything because the social and ecological conditions were just perfect. So, and then there's something in between, and there is where Ecosia sometimes steps in again and say, okay, an assessment was done. We see a bit more is needed. Let's do it. This will be really based on discussions with the partner and together agreeing that this makes sense or not.
And how is this financed? So because you took the money once from the search and put it into trees, and so the additional monitoring, how is this then enabled?
Ecosia has a large tree planting budget every year, and if we see that some of our sites would benefit from some extra costs like maintenance, etc., then we can do that. And of course, we have the revenues from our advertisements coming in. We also have some money invested that is actually bringing us a return in renewable energy, but also in land use projects. We can use some of these returns. So that's a way how we can keep on financing if we think it's needed. Some of these interventions. I will give you an example. So we work with the Global Biodiversity Standard. This has been set up by the Botanical Gardens as a standard to make sure that restoration projects are actually following good biodiversity practices when it comes to bringing back forests. And Ecosia has been since the start involved in setting up these standards because this is so important to us. Our focus has been way more on biodiversity than, for example, on carbon. And they did an assessment of a site that we do together with the Jane Goodall Institute in Uganda. And the site got certified as the first site under the Global Biodiversity Standard because there's really a great mix of tree species. They see wildlife coming back. The social economic context of the site is very good. But the report also said it would need a bit more weeding and additional maintenance for the site to thrive. Well, that's a very clear case for us where we say, okay, with a little bit extra, we can bring this site to the next level. So we're doing that.
Yeah, great. Christian, I want to zoom a little bit out because Ecosia is not just a search engine. You have solar parks, invested in regenerative agriculture startup. I think there's also this competition fund for European farmers. There's a search engine. There's AI-assisted search. It has really become an ecosystem. And at the moment, the search engine financed tree planting. The search results are made climate neutral through solar or wind energy investments. Are you thinking about really an ecosystem that also have synergies, maybe that in the future, I don't know, returns from solar parks also, again, fund restoration? So What is your vision on this? What started as an search engine is now really building into an ecosystem.
Yeah. I think this is already happening now, because we've reached a scale now where we're generating tens of millions of profits every year to basically say, okay, how can we have the biggest positive impact on our planet? And planting trees or restoring land is one of the best levers that we have there. But there are also other things that we're doing, and we're seeing this more and more holistically. And one of those elements is also, hey, we need to build our own search index. I think it's just, how can we make this, like, really put this on a more and more stable foundation and have a positive flywheel that we can also, in the end, acquire more market share, because that means that we have a lot more money available in the future. And I would love to get to that point where we have 5 or 10% global market share in the search business or in the AI business. That would be, we would be such a force in the restoration of our planet if you just look at how much money Google or Microsoft has available. Imagine if we had that for the things that we would like to do. And then I think, as you said, there's a mix, and then some of the things support each other. There's no reason why you could not combine like farming with trees and maybe also with solar panels and do that as a community project. And we have those learnings from all those different areas. And at the same time, we're also a company that is kind of a deep tech company. And we're the only ones really building a European search index. It's complicated to do. We're very deep into the AI topic as well. But at the same time, we're working in remote areas where there's no internet at all. And we somehow need to get trees growing. And we have this wide spectrum of technology and nature, and we bring this together. We're one of the few companies that I think treat those two things, technology and nature, really on an equal level.
Yeah.
And that's why we also see certain solutions where, tech-focused companies propose solutions where you feel like, why don't you just use trees for this? It just really seems stupid. Also some of those tech bros, how they're trying to develop machines that basically do the same as trees, and we just, because we understand nature and technology,
Air capturing something,
for example,
like that.
we can experiment with that, but we have scalable solutions that have thrived for millions or billions of years. Let's just implement them. And I think we can bring a very unique perspective and make this change from a destructive economy to a regenerative economy happen. But we need a big scale for this.
Yeah. And you mentioned you use both of these technology and restoration equally and synergetically. So if we look into the landscape, if we look onto solar regenerative energy, I have the feeling it's really advanced already. So China is producing regenerative energy at costs far below the fossil fuel energy. If we now look into the regenerative agricultural space, we only see a small fraction. I don't know, in Germany, like maybe 5% organic food. Maybe this is wrong. Hopefully it's more, but it's still a fraction. Although the benefits are super obvious. They're more healthy for us to eat. They're better for the animals, better for the soil, better for the water, better for the climate. And how can we bring this closer? So the energy transition already is happening, and it will not go back. So also through the political situation, also fueled in a positive way, maybe that the energy transition will happen faster. But how could we catch up also with the land-based systems and make this also bring this more to the surface?
I think at least in a world where there is no real support for more climate positive solutions, you need to get to the level where the climate friendly solution is the cheaper or more profitable solution. This is now the case with renewable energy, which is just massively cheaper than, nuclear, coal, or oil, gas, whatever. So naturally it's getting scaled. And even though Trump and also German ministers are trying to block this, they will not be successful because it's just cheaper and better. For other areas, this kind of market solution isn't there yet, unfortunately. So we would need something like a CO2 price in the positive and negative direction, and then already those things would be scaling massively.
Priced in.
Because
Yeah.
regenerative agriculture is just, if you would just put not even a high CO2 price, but just some CO2 price in it, that would be extremely superior to industrial agriculture. So, I mean, I hope we will get those rules that at some point you get rewarded if you repair the planet, and you have to pay if you destroy it. As long as we don't have those rules, we need to rely on other solutions that just work without those compensations. And I mean, already in regenerative agriculture, especially now with gas prices and fertilizer prices being extremely high, people will think, maybe I can plant clover between my crop, because that is also bringing nitrogen into the soil. Maybe I should try this. So I think with, I mean, many of those solutions are just superior, and they will be extremely more superior if you put a price on CO2. But if and how this is going to happen, I think we can't rely on it. So, but in the long term, I mean, even organic farming is already more profitable. You just need to close that gap for the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then it is already more profitable. It's just, I wish there was more support for those types of systems, because everybody else is just destroying the planet and doesn't have to pay for it. That's really what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe so this is all very true, and I think there's a really strong parallel between the energy transition and the, let's say, land use or agriculture transition. I just think that the land use one is indeed maybe where the energy transition was 20 years ago, but also in land use you're fighting against a lot of subsidies. If you want to try and set up a regenerative farm in Europe, for example, you might not have access to all the subsidies that conventional farmers get. It's very unfair, and it's also, it doesn't make sense. It's the same like the fossil fuel subsidies that we discussed earlier. So I think there is that, but there's also really a lot already happening. So I think just with, as in the energy transition, yes, there is dinosaurs, and in fossil fuels, they are literally dinosaurs, but crushed into oil, that are still trying to stop this transition. And we have dinosaurs like that as well in agriculture. But, and they have big power, of course. But there's a lot of farmers, particularly the newer generation, that wants to do it differently as well. If you speak to young farmers in the Netherlands or Germany, they're like, well, I'm not going to do it like my dad did it. It doesn't make sense. It's not fun. I don't want to go into, a white suit into my big stable and then pretend I'm a farmer. They don't want to do that. And the same is true with young people, for example, in Western Africa, whose dad is a cocoa farmer. They don't want to do it that way. They want to either set up a cool system or leave for the cities. And I was in Morocco a couple of weeks ago to visit one of our projects there. And there, farmers who are from the countryside. They work in the cities as to work in construction to make money, but they really want to go back to where they come from. And now they're planting a lot of trees, pomegranates, olives, almond, etc., to create an asset for their children. So they say, I have to plant trees so I can come back. And in my work, obviously, I see thousands of these stories every year of people that want to do things different, from Borneo to Brazil to everywhere. But we still have the dinosaurs that are also fighting against this. But I think we will win this fight. It's just that the stuff that we destroy, rainforests in particular, are so precious that we better win this fight a bit sooner. But I see a lot of trends going in the right direction, also because of sovereignty reasons. So this is the fertilizer we just discussed. If you are farming as a margin business, if you are able to produce your own compost and put in clovers and know other techniques that will actually keep your harvest more or less at the same level, a bit lower, but you don't have the costs, it becomes interesting. And we are investing in some of the companies that are doing that with that changing farmer landscapes.
Yeah. So if you could change one thing in the system, the question to the two of you, like one policy, one rule, the mindset to unlock more funding for nature, what would it be?
I think my answer has been the same for the past few years. If it was possible to have an actual CO2 price in the positive and negative direction, that is global and mandatory for everyone, we wouldn't have this problem anymore. Everything would just get solved. So that if that was possible, if we had kind of a functioning global community of leaders, we would be fine already.
Yeah, I would almost say the same thing. And if that isn't possible, then at least stop all the subsidies that are destroying the world. I mean, what the heck is happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. So before coming to an end of this episode, let's make it really practical. So for someone listening now, what can they do to support Ecosia on a personal level? What's the simplest first step?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, use Ecosia first of all. That I think, I mean, use it as your search engine, download the browser, and also in the future you can use this as your AI app, so as an alternative to ChatGPT. This is more than just doing something nice for the planet. This is, I think, a movement for a different type of technology and also maybe for more geopolitical security of Europe. So use it, and I mean, tell your friends and family, but also if you're part of an organization, if you're working in a company, or I mean, even I don't know, maybe at your university or something like that, try to get it as the default as well. We have so many examples how people are using this in their company, and there's a lot of good feedback. I think this is the multiplier that you could then have. We have companies like Deutsche Telekom switching over, and they're planting hundreds of thousands of trees because of that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so you mentioned if we would have, let's say, similar amounts of resources than Google or Microsoft or in that space to roll out our more sustainable technology. If there's a corporate, if there are a big family office foundation that, let's say, put 200 million or more onto the table, is that something that you can use, and what would you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can at least help channel in the right direction. So we cannot accept donations. We're not not a non-profit like that, but we can help channel in the right directions and at least have conversations, because we've seen so many things and we know what works and what doesn't work and which actors are credible or not. So yeah, you should talk to Pieter probably if you have a lot of money to invest into landscape restoration. I think we can have some good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for sure. If
what
you
would
work
you?
at such a place,
Sorry.
then come and see us. I mean, we are giving advice like this actually quite often already to organization companies coming to us. And we have a big network and we have a lot of accumulated knowledge. We are more and more holistically working on landscapes, including nature restoration and businesses. So yeah, we have spent 100 million so far on restoration and renewable agriculture. So we know how to do this.
Yeah, great. And what would you say to a young person that already uses Ecosia and want to do something beyond? So where to start?
I think, well, maybe they're also already doing this, but I mean, there's so many things we haven't covered in this talk. But one of the actually the elephant in the room is not the elephant, but is a cow. So if we talk about what is causing a lot of rainforest destruction in the world, it is actually directly related to us eating meat, and that is because either animals graze on the lands where there used to be rainforest, or because much of the rainforest is cut and then turned into soy as food for the animals. And one of the best things you can do is really reduce your meat consumption. But maybe if you're an Ecosia user, you already know this, but then talk to some of your friends. And if you then also switch to maybe having a bean day or a bean weekend or a couple of bean days a week, that is really, really helping. I mean, these are the small steps you can do that are actually not small, that will have a big effect if everyone would do that on land use, on CO2 emissions, on biodiversity, and on your health as well, by the way.
Maybe I can add, I think also putting, let's say, your career into the right place. No? So you if you can become a lawyer, a financial expert, but I think it makes a big difference. Yeah, Christian, you studied business, but then used this knowledge, let's say, in the right direction. And so if I now hear that around 100 million went into restoration, I think this is really a huge success. And I think everyone takes a little bit responsibility, not just do less harm, but also maybe become more proactive and select the right career path. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I think the regenerative economy will be growing. I think there's the only. Otherwise there's no economy at all anymore. Like humanity will be gone. So there will be challenges on the way, but I think the future is clearly there. Like how do we, generate profit and help the planet? I think there and that in almost every area of our economy, in energy generation, finance, and so on, land use. This will be the future. And I think if a young person looking for a career, I would not work in the past, basically. So how can we extract resources and destroy our planet? That will not last. At the moment you have, unfortunately, global leaders that are supporting that type of economy, but they will fall. It will fall apart at some point.
And Pieter, you worked 10 years at Ecosia and visited so many projects in Burkina Faso, to Brazil, to Asia. What still gives you hope so that you think the work you're doing really makes sense?
Well, the people I work with, it's in all of the projects. What I really learned in the past 10 years is to put all pre-assumptions you would have about people aside.
Yeah.
Everywhere you will find great leaders that want to bring their community to the next level. Everywhere you will find farmers that are really taking care of their family in a great way. You meet amazing people in my job, and I'm from the Netherlands originally, and I met some great people there. But the most amazing people I've met in my life are those working in those projects that we have, that have a very strong vision for how they want to change the landscape in which they live for the better. So, this is an exercise in hope, if you meet all these people. And for me, Ecosia is also a way to connect our users, to bring them directly into the kitchens and the lands of the projects we're working with. And with that, I hope we will also create more understanding between different groups and kind of rip them out of your bubble. And look, there's so much hope for humanity. In fact, there's only a few that are really trying to work against it. That sounds familiar, isn't it? Yeah. So no, it's all the people that I met that are having so strong ambitions, a very strong moral compass, are very convincing when it comes to talking to the communities, have deep understanding of what is happening. Then I can just be humble and be very happy that I'm in a position where I can sit next to them and talk.
I sometimes say we're not planting trees, we're planting hope. I think that's totally true.
Our users are, in fact, they should really realize what through their actions they make possible. So become part of this. Use Ecosia. Use us.
Yeah, it's really enabling action. Is there anything you would like the listeners to know we have not yet covered? Okay.
No, I think we covered it all.
Christian, Pieter, thank you very much for this conversation, for proving that a search engine can be a force for good. And that technology and nature are not enemies, but they are basically our friends. And that a company doesn't need to extract profits to be profitable and meaningful. And to our listeners, if you take one thing from this episode, let it be this. Every time you search the internet, you make a choice. You can search with a company that sells your data and maximize shareholder values, or you can search with Ecosia. So this is kind of advertising I love to make and plant trees while you're doing it. Yeah. So thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you for having us.